Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, Halloween, Chucky, Texas Chainsaw, all that stuff. Slasher films, horror films, all that stuff. And I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, that franchise is added to my list of favorites. So, great cast. Freddie Prinze Jr. as Ray, Jennifer Love Hewitt as Julie, Sarah Michelle Gellar as Helen, Ryan Phillippe as Barry, Muse Watson as Ben Willis, and Bridget Wilson as Elsa, Helen's sister. This movie was distributed by Columbia Pictures. Let's see, directed by Jim Gillespie. Of course, this movie came out in October of 1997, and as a lot of you know, I cover older movies as well as newer movies. Again, a lot of us fans and us horror film geeks, we kind of just cover whatever across the board. If we like it, it's good. If we like it, it's good. So the budget on this film was $17 million, and the box office was just over $125 million. Pretty good for a horror slasher film of the 90s. It's actually really good, especially for a movie like that at that time. A year after running over a fisherman and dumping his body into the water, four friends reconvene when Julie receives a frightening letter telling her that their crime was seen. While pursuing who he thinks is responsible for the letter, Barry is run over by a man with a meat hook. The bloodletting only increases from there as the killer with the hook continues to stalk Julie, Helen, and Ray. Now, the reviews on this movie are a little bit lower than what I think they should be. And of course, it doesn't surprise me for a couple reasons. One, we know Rotten Tomatoes and places like that are pretty tough. Even some of the best of movies, they don't even give it like the best of the best ratings. I would say some of the ones that come closest, maybe, I don't always count this, but Marvel, the Avengers and stuff like that, everybody gives them 100%. They'll give them probably 90 to 95%. I guess that's pretty good for them. Here's what they gave to this film. The original 97 film, Internet Movie Database gave it a 58%. Common Sense Media gave it 40%. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 45%, and Google users gave it 80 to 87%. Yeah. Of course, it's slasher. Who cares? People run, people die, they scream, all that stuff. That's just the common perception of it. That's just what people think of it. So, Common Sense Media, I see that, as usual, there are more kids giving it a review than parents. 32 kids, 15 parents. The community reviews, let's see. Matter of fact, maybe I should go back. Yeah. Sorry about that. So they gave it a 40, as I stated. That's crazy. No real positive messages here. Any positive role models? The teens run away from a seemingly fatal accident. One girl does act as the conscience of the gang, doing the most to find out about the identity of their hit-and-run victim. While 3 of the 4 characters show remorse over their actions, one of the characters doesn't seem to show any. Yeah. Violence, typical stuff that you would see in horror slasher films. What you see in here is not that different than what you see in some of the other slasher films that I listed. A man is struck by a car and is seemingly dead. His bloodied body is his bloodied and lifeless body is tossed into a bay. A man murders several characters by stabbing them in the chest, throat, or back with a giant hook. Lots of blood, dead bodies. A hand is severed from an arm as it grinds through a pulley. A fist fight, some physical and verbal bullying. Now, here's how they break it down. Here's how they break down their synopsis. Actually, you know what? I could skip that part because let me get to, is it good? Kids give it an 80%. Parents give it an 80%. But overall, their review website gave the review only 40%. I think the kids and the parents are right on this one. I'm with them on this one. There's one. This one's too bloody and brutal for kids. Early in this youth-oriented thriller, a group of teenagers tells each other scary urban legend stories about maniacs with hooks for hands. As much as parents might prefer that kids sit around at night with flashlights, wide-eyed, trembling, reciting tales from the Bible, the Arabian Nights, Twain, or F. Scott Fitzgerald, young people always seem to go back to the thrill of morbid stuff with the hook-handed maniacs. And this holds true whether they're gathered around campfires in the woods or the cool fire of home video. I Know What You Did Last Summer was a popular hit, tapping into that spook story appeal with a good-looking cast who has been reigning on popular TV shows of the time. But there's not much under the surface, or even on the surface for that matter, besides a familiar setup. It derives from a Lois Duncan YA novel of the same title that's been avidly read ever since its publication in 1974, but the bulk of the story deviates. But this film does have a sort of morality, insofar as the youth's covering up their misdeed has negative repercussions and not just the obvious gory ones. Under the cloud of what they did last summer, the once close quartet drifts apart. Their suspicions, eventually directed against each other, make them easier targets for the real villain. It might be noted that the burden of guilt gets lightened a little by a surprise plot twist. The road accident had actually interrupted a murder in progress, and the victim was doomed anyway. Alfred Hitchcock, this isn't, although, why'd they say it like that? Alfred Hitchcock, this is. Basically, they're saying, this isn't Alfred Hitchcock, although scriptwriter Kevin Williamson came closer to that lofty ambition with the similarly bloody but dark-humored Scream and its sequels, effective whodunits styled as semi-humorous takeoffs of slasher movies, such as this one. Talk to your kids about the appeal of horror films. We talked about that before. Why do people, especially teens, love being scared? How is background music used to heighten moments of suspense? How is background music used to heighten scenes in other genres such as westerns, comedies, and war movies? How is the element of surprise a crucial feature of horror films? How does surprise attempt to create scares in this particular movie? Well, one thing that's a little bit surprising, and for anybody who's a first-time watcher, I mean, yeah, they thought that essentially what most of us thought when the guy got hit, that he was dead. Just to put it simple. And I think that, again, the appeal of horror films to me is, and I've said this in a bunch of other videos, it's the element of just having your heart racing, especially when, in a lot of cases, you don't really know what's going to happen next. Some of it might be predictable, some is not. Depends on the movie. These type of movies, in comparison to something like, say, Insidious, which is definitely much less predictable there. Anybody who saw Insidious knows what I'm talking about. I just like that element of being at the edge of your seat and just staring at the TV and getting ready for a jump scare, because I feel that it keeps the adrenaline going and it just kind of keeps you awake and you can't take your eyes off the TV. That's why I like this type of stuff. So I don't know what streaming it's on right now. I know it was on Netflix when I first watched it, but they took it off. But I bought it on YouTube, all three of them. So this right here is definitely in the top 10, definitely in my top 10 favorite horror slasher films. I would say horror films in general, but I kind of divide it. So you got your slasher horrors and then you got your psychological suspense. The psychological suspense part, for sure, Insidious is number one. Insidious is number one. And then you got other movies like Smile, things like that. Slasher, of course, Scream is number one for me. Halloween would be two, and then the rest of them, it's hard for me to put in order. It's kind of a tie between Jason and Freddie. I would put Chucky closer to maybe 9 or 10. I think What You Did Last Summer, I would probably put that at maybe somewhere between 5 and 7. So either way, I'm glad to see that they got another movie coming out next year, and I'm going to be in theaters for it. And I'm assuming a lot of you horror film geeks will be too. So I got more movies and shows to talk about. Like and subscribe.